G'day guys, Matt Brand here. Let me ask you this. If I covered up this badge, would you think that we're in a Mazda Ute or a bloody luxury SUV? Welcome to the Mazda BT-50, which is essentially a Isuzu D-Max. Except it's got its own body kit on it and it's got a, well, nicer interior. To the point where this thing feels more like a car than it does a dual cab Ute. The BT-50 competes with things like the Ford Ranger, the Volkswagen Amarok, the Toyota HiLux, and surprise, surprise, the Isuzu D-Max. Today we're gonna be doing a detailed on and off-road review of the Mazda BT-50, and remember kids,
subscribe to Matt Brand Cars and hit the notification bell too, or else you'll be on Santa's naughty list.
Now the model here I'm driving today is the top spec GT, which starts at just under 61,000 Australian dollars drive away. Well, actually there is a new Thunder, which sits above the GT. However, it is the exact same car, just with a few off-roady additions to it, which you could probably spec out yourself. And for a dual cab Ute that's fully loaded with features, that's actually a very impressive price. Now under the bonnet you get the legendary 4JJ3 Isuzu engine, and that's actually a great engine to have. It's not the most powerful engine. In fact, it produces a little bit less power than the outgoing BT-50, which was based on the Ford Ranger. And the 4JJ3 engine is renowned for its reliability, although I do know of some issues that it's been having, and I'll explain those a bit later in the video. Now the engine is a 3-litre 4-cylinder turbo diesel engine, and it pumps out 140 kilowatt of power and 450 Newton meters of torque. So yes, it certainly doesn't have the most power of the class. However, what it does have is extreme refinement, to the point where this thing just feels like you're driving a normal car. But then when you do try and give it some sauce, you know, it makes a lot of noise, but it doesn't go very fast. Now, power is sent through a 6-speed manual or the optional 6-speed Aisin torque converter transmission, which I have here, and it is phenomenal. It really does help for smoothness. Upshifts are seamless, as are downshifts. And so you really don't notice it working away most of the time, and that's really impressive. Excuse me here while I give it some reliability sauce. Ooh. Lost the back end there for a second. Yeah, so power is sent through the rear wheels, as you could probably guess when you're just driving around in 2-wheel drive mode. And as I said, it's just so refined. And it drives exactly the same as the Isuzu D-Max. Mazda haven't changed any of the mechanicals under the skin, and that's not a bad thing, because when I reviewed the Isuzu D-Max, I mean, I loved it. That thing drove like a car, as does this. Now, there is a lot more to talk about with how this thing drives, but for now I want to move on to how it looks. The thing I love most about the BT-50 is it's not trying to be an ultra masculine Ute like every other dual cab out there. And it really does look like a premium SUV from the front anyway. And so from the front, I think that this is one of the best looking Utes on the road. You have the huge classic Mazda grille, and the headlights are also classic Mazda with the little daytime running light within them, and they're super, super bright despite their pretty small size. The side again is pretty cool. It's got some nice body lines to it. Again, not super aggressive, like just don't need it in a Ute. You do get these big bulky side steps, which unfortunately does eat into ground clearance. The 18-inch wheels, I think they're a very good look too, with plenty of rubber on them. So this thing is a semi-capable off-roader straight from the factory. I will say though, maybe it looks a little bit bare, probably because it doesn't come with any sports bars. I think that would really suit the back of this thing, and being a top spec, you kind of would have expected it. Well, I certainly would. And then the rear, again, is nothing really special. It's quite hard to stylize a Ute with all the regulations, like you can't have the tail lights on a moving panel. Speaking of tail lights, they are just halogens. They're not LEDs like up the front. I mean, it's fine, especially since a lot of people will be putting a tray on the back of these things anyway. And of course, it is just a giant tub, so we might as well talk about that. It is very much in line with its competitors, nothing very standout. It can take a ton of weight in the back. It's 1,571 millimeters long, 1,530 millimeters wide, and 1,120 millimeters wide between the rear arches. There is no tub liner though, and that is a bit of a disappointment. You do get that in a lot of other competitors. So it's just bare metal paint, which can scratch relatively easily, although you do get a rubber mat back there. And no, that's not a rubber meat. Bad joke. Also, you don't get any 12-volt socket down there, though you do get a few tied down points. So, I mean, it's relatively practical, not class leading, not class poor. It's all right. So, what about the interior? And by the way, if you have been enjoying this review, please do like it. It really helps the channel out. So, let's start with the overall look, layout, and feel. And as I said, in here, it is just like a luxury SUV. It makes no sense to me how nice it is. I mean, it kind of does. Mazda's been going a bit upmarket recently, and they've put that same treatment within here. So you get soft touch materials up on the dash, on the door sills, even on the armrests. It's beautiful leather. And this car's been spec'd with brown leather too. Again, super unnecessary, but it looks surprisingly great. Usually in dual cab utes, you get hard materials. I mean, you get them like up on top of the door, but it really doesn't matter. And the reason that soft touch materials are so important is it helps dampen a lot of the road noise. And so this thing is surprisingly quiet within here, even though it's got a pretty noisy diesel engine. In terms of differences to the D-Max, it's pretty much exclusive to this top trim up here. The dash looks slightly different, and yeah, as I said, it actually feels a little bit nicer, though a lot of it is the same. And there are some other really nice design touches within the cabin too. For example, the air conditioning controls are honestly some of the nicest I've ever used. They're like perfectly well dampened. Again, I don't understand why it's in here, but I love it. In terms of practicality, it excels there too. You have a dual glove box up front. You have a little hidden storage area on the driver's side. Well, hidden until you've watched this. As I said, the center armrest, you have a bit of storage within there. Then you have two really deep cup holders up front, like really deep. I've lost a coffee cup in there before. You get more cup holders in the door bins, and the door bins are a relatively large size too. And then there's quite a large storage space up front for your phone or whatever. And there's no wireless charger in here too, which is a bit of a shame. Though in terms of I/O up front, you do get a 12-volt socket, a USB, and an auxiliary in. I haven't seen one of those in a new car for a while, so I mean, it's good that it's still there. All right, we're in the twisties. Let's give it some of the twisty sauce. Handles surprisingly well. Of course, there's plenty of body roll. We'll talk about that a bit later too, but that's not uncommon for a dual cab ute. You know what? It takes the twisty sauce pretty damn well. I'm quite surprised. Now in the GT, you do get these leather seats, and again, they're just incredible. First of all, they're heated. You don't even get that in the D-Max, which was really nice when I was off-roading on a cold, wet day. Second of all, look at them. They look absolutely incredible. And they're extremely comfortable too. You get lumbar support, so on longer journeys, I have been totally fine. And yeah, I'm super impressed. The steering wheel is one of the softest leathers I've ever grabbed onto. And again, it works so well. It is extremely functional. You have buttons to control pretty much everything within here, including the safety system. And I have a bit to say on that. Now, this is one of the safest utes you can buy. It's got an airbag between the passenger and the driver, which means that it reaches the 2020 5-star ANCAP safety rating, which is something most utes just don't have. It's also got a whole host of safety systems, actually quite impressive. What isn't so impressive though is just how sensitive all of the systems are. Yes, it has all the technology to keep you safe, but it's not tuned well. It beeps and bongs at you all the damn time. I don't know if you've heard it throughout I don't know if you've heard it throughout this entire review, but there's beeps if you go slightly over the speed limit. If you're a bit too close to the side of the lane, it just warns you about everything. And this thing has autonomously emergency braked on me far too many times. And I really wish it wouldn't, because there's almost nothing more terrifying than that happening, and I mean it. Anyway, the instrument cluster. On the left-hand side, you have a nice big bright tachometer. Right-hand side, nice big bright speedometer. I like it because it's simple. In the center, you get a little screen you can toggle through different menus. Not the fastest, but you get enough information within there, so I'm not gonna complain. I'm also not gonna complain about this infotainment screen. It's 9 inches, and it's really good. It's really responsive, it's color accurate. You get navigation, digital radio, Android Auto, and wireless Apple CarPlay, which is pretty cool, but kind of redundant if you don't have a wireless charger, to be honest. And it's also connected to a really good sound system where there are even speakers in the roof. And it sounds awesome, especially for a generic dual cab ute. If I told you I knew where I was right now, I'd be lying to you. I am so lost. But in beautiful country Victoria. I'm at this like really cool bridge thing. Ooh, it's a bit close. Oh, I dropped my microphone. Testing. Is this Puffing Billy? Oh my God, Puffing Billy's here. Puffing Billy. Hello. I just waved at him and he waved back. That is so cool. It's Puffing Bloody Billy. Bye, Puffing Billy. Didn't someone die on that? In terms of the back seat, it's a pretty good affair as well. You get the really nice leather seats and the brown leather. I love that. You also get some hidden storage underneath the seats, which is cool, but it's only hidden until you've watched this video. But extra storage space is extra storage space. In terms of space back there, I've got enough leg room, headroom, and tow room, so it's pretty comfortable. You also get a couple of air vents back there, a USB port, and a storage area. So yeah, it's a great place to be. Anyway, enough about the interior. Let's teleport over to the farm with Fatty Matty, who's gonna take this light off-roading. Here's something you probably didn't know about me. I actually grew up driving utes on farms. Yes, I am a bit of a farm boy, and this is really where utes originated from. So I've taken it back to a farm to see how the BT-50 does with some light off-roading, and I have to say I'm quite impressed. So here are some of the stats. 240 millimeters of ground clearance, an approach angle of 30.4 degrees, a departure angle of 24.2 degrees, and a ramp over angle of 23.8 degrees. Now, all of those are pretty standard numbers for the class, nothing spectacular, but it can certainly hold its own. Now you get 3 driving modes. You get 2 high, 4 high, and 4 low. And to put it into 4 low, you have to put the car into manual, push that in, and we'll wait for that to engage. And that will essentially let us go over this really muddy patch here and hopefully not get bogged. What will also help with that is we have a lockable diff. So let's put that on, that up, cool. Now, as I said, we're on just standard tires, so I don't want to get bogged, but I have faith. I have faith. Nice, not an issue at all. Didn't really expect it to be an issue, but it's not. Here's a bit of a muddy patch. I can feel it slipping and sliding around, but you know what? It's done it with absolute ease. Absolute ease. I'm actually really surprised by how well it got through that, to be honest. I thought it'd be a bit more of a battle because it's been raining a lot here in country Victoria. You really feel the bumps with this leaf spring suspension, but not horrible either. Quite surprised. Actually, there's one more test. This is a real test of how this thing will do off-road. So let's go back through this really muddy patch. Oh, nice. And here is even more muddy. Let's hope I don't get bogged. I can feel the car going sideways. With ease, with absolute ease. I think this thing is absolutely great. But, you know, nothing class leading, I'm not going to say, but it does the job very well, especially for most people who realistically won't be taking this thing fully off-roading. Oh. We're a big dip here. Let's see how this approach angle goes. Nice, we're right. Oh, yeah. Yep, cool. Bananas. I like it. You know, the best thing about four-wheel driving in the BT-50 is I've got my heated seats on, so I'm really comfortable. Okay, the other really cool thing about the BT-50 is it has hill descent control. So that will keep us going slowly down a hill. So let's try that out. Oh, I can hear it braking. It's holding us pretty well. I'll tell you what. Yep. I'm quite impressed by that. Again, nothing class leading, but it's really nice to have. All right, I think that's enough off-roading, especially in a paddock like this. Let's get back to on-road driving, I think. Is this off-roading sauce? I don't know. So yeah, this thing is a pretty capable off-roader, but it's also an incredibly capable on-roader too. So I've taken it out to country Victoria and we're going over the twisty. So we're going to give it some twisty sauce. And one of the things that shocks me most about this is how well tuned it all is. You know, you can take a corner maybe a bit too hard and there's not an insane amount of body roll that you do get in some utes. In fact, it handles really well and steering has been tuned really good too. So you have this like pretty heavy steering, which is exactly what I want because then I can have more feel of the road and I can better place it too. So yeah, I'm super impressed with how this thing has been driving. I will say though, you do slip and slide around these seats, but it's not really meant for what I'm doing right now. So I'm not too surprised. In terms of suspension, it's definitely a bit jittery when you don't have any weight in the back. Of course, we're on leaf spring suspensions like any dual cab ute. And yeah, you can feel it. You can definitely feel the bumps in the road. But I reckon if we had a few kilos in the back, it would feel a bit more comfortable. But again, for a dual cab ute, I'm surprised by how smooth it is, generally speaking. Usually they fall apart when you start to take them at, you know, 7/10 on a back road, but this is not having any issues at all. In terms of fuel economy too, I'm getting 8.3 liters per 100 kilometers, which is really impressive. It's quite close to the figures that they claim. I think it's like 8.1 liters. So yeah, zero complaints there. Again, you're not gonna get the fastest engine, you know, put your foot down. It's not the best, but it does a half decent job at propelling you forward. And as I said, it's got plenty of torque. So yeah, that's impressive. And so it really does just feel like the whole package. It really feels like it can do, well, pretty much everything. Now, I do know someone who owns a BT-50. They're a farmer down in Tassie, where my farm is too. I don't know why I dropped that fact into there, but yeah, I actually know about dual cab utes. I grew up driving them, believe it or not. Anyway, he came from a Triton, and his BT-50 has left him stranded twice. And it's almost not the BT-50's fault. What happens is that this thing has a DPF, a diesel particulate filter, where it traps all of the nasties that comes out of a diesel engine. Now, for most people, if you drive it enough, it will burn off all of that diesel nasties within the particulate filter. But he drives 10 kilometers between his home and his farm. And so it never really gets up to temperature enough to burn off the diesel particulate filter because it self-cleans when you drive enough. And as a result, he gets a warning light in his dashboard for a diesel particulate filter. The first time he had it, he didn't know what it was. He just kept driving it, doing what he was doing, 10 kilometers between his home and the farm. But then it did go into limp mode because I guess the filter became full or clogged or whatever, and he had to get it towed to the dealership in Hobart, about 100 k's away, to fix it. Now that has happened to him twice. Of course, the warning comes up a lot more than twice, but he has to drive about 30 to 40 kilometers to be able to clear it. Now I want to make it clear this issue is not exclusive to the BT-50. It will happen with any car that has a diesel particulate filter. If you don't drive them far enough and let them burn off all the nasties that they've captured, they will go into limp mode. But just kind of keep that in the back of your mind when you're buying any diesel car, that you have to drive it far enough to make sure that you don't get stranded. I should probably mention that this thing can tow up to 3.5 tons, which is pretty impressive. So is the Mazda BT-50 worth it? Well, if you can look past the really intrusive safety systems and you drive these cars far enough with the diesel particulate filter issue, then I think absolutely it's worth it. It certainly doesn't have the most powerful engine out there, but it does have probably the most refined engine out there. And when you're sat in this position like I am now, I feel like I'm in a luxury SUV more so than a dual cab ute. This thing is off-road capable and it's just so easy to live with, so much so that my girlfriend also likes it. So I have the girlfriend tick of approval, which is quite hard for me to get, let me tell you. So yeah, I think the Mazda BT-50 is absolutely worth it, and probably worth it over the D-Max. But I'm curious, what do you think of the Mazda BT-50? Is it the best dual cab out there, or are there better ones? Let me know in the comments below. Of course, subscribe to the channel if you're new and hit that notification bell, and while you're at it, why don't you share this video with someone who is interested in a BT-50? Feel free to like the video too, it really helps the channel out, and why don't you click over there and watch one of my other videos. Anyway, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next week.